Mike Tomlin defends Lamar Jackson, and Jared Goff gift wraps the MVP to Lamar after his disaster in Week 10. And the media is not looking too savvy when it comes to picking Jared over Lamar for MVP. We talk about that and so much more coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today, making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day and a part of your day in general. We're free and available for you, all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel. Also, in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens here on Monday is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Another week back in the saddle here on Locked On Ravens, and we don't have the game to talk about necessarily, at least not a new one, because the Ravens already took care of business in week number 10 on Thursday night. So that resulted in some stress-free football, some stress-free Sunday football watching, although to be completely honest, it really wasn't all that stress-free, because I don't know about anybody else, but for me, I was watching that Washington-Pittsburgh game. I also had my eye on the Colts and Buffalo game, and as well the Chiefs and the Broncos. And, well, I mean, if you're talking about Ravens rooting interests, you go 0 for 3 on those games, 2 of which, the Chiefs and the Steelers, win with absolutely crazy magic. Like, I don't know, the Mike Tomlin magic and the Chiefs Taylor Swift magic comes through at the end. So I wish I could say it was stress-free for me, but, man, I was sweating those games out, and unfortunately it just did not go the Ravens' way. And we'll talk about kind of an AFC whip-around in the final part of the show, talk about how teams are looking compared to the Ravens and where the Ravens stack up in the conference. But we'll also talk about the MVP, because as I had very loudly proclaimed on the show, multiple different shows over the course of both last week and the weekend, I thought Lamar wrapped up the MVP, and Jared Goff decided to do a little gift wrapping himself and give the award over to Lamar. So we'll talk about that and the media being exposed for picking Jared Goff over Lamar. But in the first part of the show, Mike Tomlin defends Lamar Jackson. Some are saying he sweet-talked Lamar Jackson after the Steelers win over the Commanders. So we will talk about that, because that right now is most certainly the biggest story in Baltimore, at least in Ravens land right now. So, Mike Tomlin, or obviously the Ravens and the Steelers face off against each other in Week 11. It's going to be a huge matchup. The Steelers come into that game at 7-2, the Ravens at 7-3. And the Steelers, again, they faced off against Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. And so after the game, Mike Tomlin was doing his post-game press conference, and he was asked about similarities and differences between Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels. And Mike Tomlin he laughed. He couldn't believe the question. And he said, be real slow comparing people to Lamar Jackson. That's the multi-time MVP. That's Mr. Jackson. We'll see Mr. Jackson in a few days. And so, look, I think a lot of people have a lot of respect for Mike Tomlin across the league. I know that for me, he's one of the best coaches in this league. I know a little respect was definitely lost back in the day, which is the Jacoby Jones trip. But look, we have to respect what he's done over in Pittsburgh, right? You might not like him, but the coach that he is, he's done a good job with that Pittsburgh team. Is kind of slimy as that is to say, as a Ravens guy. We have to respect that greatness and what Mike Tomlin has done. He and John Harbaugh, obviously, 2 of the highest tenured coaches, longest tenured coaches in this league. And Mike Tomlin, I guess, has a way with words, right? I know that some people think John Harbaugh does. Other people do not think John Harbaugh has a way with words. But I think people think that Mike Tomlin has a certain way with words in a lot of different aspects, including just openly trashing Patrick Queen And then Patrick Queen goes and plays for him. So, I mean, look, if that's not an example of Mike Tomlin having a way with words, I don't know what is. By the way, there are plenty of storylines for this Ravens and Steelers game. And the one I'm most excited for is Derrick Henry versus Patrick Queen meeting in the middle first time. And we'll obviously, we have a lot of week to go here. It's only Monday. We'll be talking about that throughout the course of the week. But for me, I mean, Mike Tomlin is not wrong here. Mike Tomlin is 100% correct because we talk about, oh, well, this person's compared to Lamar and that person's compared to Lamar. And Jaden himself got sick of those comparisons before the Ravens faced off against the Commanders in week 6. And he was like, I'm Jaden Daniels and I want to be Jaden Daniels. And that's true because Lamar is his own. Lamar's one of one, right? No one is Lamar Jackson. And you can compare whoever you want to Lamar. It's not going to work out. Like, it's not. Lamar is such a unique talent, and people are just kind of throwing comparisons around to Lamar. Now, obviously, as he has gotten better, the less names you can throw out there and the more legendary you have to get. But once you start getting into legendary territory, you're not just going to throw out a name to Lamar Jackson, one, because of that legend, and two, because of Lamar Jackson. Once you get to legendary status, that legend is that legend. That legend is one of one, right? You don't compare Tom Brady to Peyton Manning, right? You put them in the same conversation, but their games, they played differently, right? Like, they're different players. And so for Lamar, you know, you're not comparing these guys to Lamar Jackson. You can talk about, oh, well, this guy did this well and this guy did that well, and oh, Lamar and this guy, they did this well together. But no one is going to be Lamar. And so when you just throw names out there and you kind of loosely compare, oh, well, this, I know a lot of people had the Mike Vick comparisons to Lamar, and everybody's like, oh, okay, well, Lamar is baby Mike Vick and this, that, and the other. Lamar's Lamar, and Mike Vick is Mike Vick. And look, this guy is a multi-time MVP. He's on his way to his third, which we're going to be talking about throughout the course of the rest of this show. Lamar's going to have 3 MVPs. I mean, I am so certain of it, unless something absolutely crazy happens, and something crazy really would have to happen for that. And I guess now the new, I don't know if it's a meme or not at this point, but it's Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson is what Mike Tomlin is calling Lamar. So, look, I know that before this game, there's going to be a lot of different types of talk about Ravens Steelers, the rivalry, this, that, and the other. It is a rivalry, right? It is. And I know that some people do believe that Mike Tomlin was sweet talking Lamar. And I am actually pretty curious about this. So if you want to put your opinion down in the comments on YouTube or in audio form, if you want to message me on social media and share your thoughts, I'm curious to know just how many people believe that this is just, oh, okay, Mike Tomlin showing respect to Lamar, and he's defending Lamar and looking out this, that, and the other, and showing his respect. And how many people are like, oh, hold on now. Wait a second. Is Mike Tomlin buttering up Lamar in this Ravens team for this matchup? Is there an ulterior motive here for Mike Tomlin? I'm curious to see what the split is for what people think that this was from Mike Tomlin. Now, to me personally, I think it was Mike Tomlin just showing his respect. You know, I don't think there was any gamesmanship behind it. I think that Mike Tomlin truly understands that, hey, look, no one is like Lamar Jackson. And when you talk about Lamar, Mike Tomlin's defense has been the one that has given Lamar the most problems over the course of his career. We're going to be talking about that all throughout the week, where historically in Lamar's career, it's been the Steelers' defense, and there are no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But I truly think that Mike Tomlin heard this question, and he's like, no way. There's nobody like Lamar. You know, don't be so quick. So, again, the quote from Mike Tomlin, be real slow comparing people to Lamar Jackson. That's a multi-time MVP. That's Mr. Jackson. We'll see Mr. Jackson in a few days. And, yes, they will. Ravens Steelers, first installment of the rivalry 2024 coming up in week number 11 for first place in the AFC North. So, hey, you know, Lamar has long had respect by a lot of people in this league. I know for the Ravens and Steelers rivalry, there's a lot of respect on both sides. Teams don't like each other, right? We know that. Teams despise those two teams despise each other. It's Ravens Steelers week, and everybody knows it, right? When these two teams face off, there was no, oh, we like you, you like us. No, there's none of that. But there is a respect on both sides about, hey, well-run organization over there, well-run organization in Baltimore. And, I think these comments from Mike Tomlin, at least personally, that shows that respect, but it doesn't mean that both sides like each other. Let's not get that twisted. This is still one of the best rivalries in the NFL. Has it lost some juice over the years? Sure, right? We can say that, most definitely. I think, compared to the days where it was, Ray and Troy Polamalu and, Joe and Ben facing off for all those years and, Haloti Nada. And, we could go on and on and on with all the Terrell Suggs. We could go on with those names and the rivalry, because before, obviously, it was Ravens-Titans, then Ravens-Steelers fostered. But to me, I think the rivalry is still good. But sure, I mean, you could definitely argue it lost some juice over the years, but the respect on both sides, I think, has been there. But the likability, no. That's been out the window for a long time. But coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about Jared Goff gift wrapping the MVP to Lamar Jackson and the media being exposed for believing in Goff over Lamar. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to talk about on the show. First, the show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like you, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. You know what else gave me a bit of Ravens Fan Fuel this week? The moment when Marlon Humphrey forced that fumble in the Bengals game on Thursday night. That was the turning point in the game for me, and it was incredible. The Ravens looked like they were just going to get blown out in that game. Marlon Humphrey gave them the spark they needed to go out there and win the game. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com. Shipped nationwide. And the show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for shots on up to 100 times their cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. I love going on Prize Picks personally, seeing everything that they have to offer over there. And you can now win up to 100 times money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Use Tuesday Prize Picks discount select player projections up to 25%, provide even more value for your lineups. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds to turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. So for that Ravens and Bengals game on Thursday night, if you had Jamar Chase more receiving yards, you probably living large over on Prize Picks. Unfortunately, for the Ravens secondary, that was not a great game for them. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDON to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDON to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks run your game. We're back here, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher still talking with you here on this Monday edition of the show, talking Ravens football. And we have to talk about now. We talked about that Mike Tomlin stuff in the first part of the show. Now it's about the MVP, because Mike Tomlin said, oh yeah, that's Mr. Jackson. Don't be so quick comparing people to Lamar. Well, when you talk about the MVP, there have been a lot of people in that race, a lot of people that have been talked about as potential MVP candidates and players that deserve awards and this, that, and the other. And I've been pretty adamant, really, I don't even know when I started really thinking, oh yeah, Lamar, this third MVP is his, and there's no doubt about it. But, it's been a little while. I mean, Lamar's just played that well this season, but obviously not everybody sees it that way. But you see more and more people beginning to see that way, to see that light. And we had a lot of people talk about Jared Goff as the MVP leading up to Week 10. Stephen A. Smith, Andrew Whitworth, Robert Griffin III. I can go on and on and on with that list. But Jared Goff on Sunday night gift wrapped the MVP and just handed it to Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. And I had said this even before Sunday night. I thought Lamar had wrapped up MVP on that Thursday night game. You're down 14. You come back to win the game. You throw 4 touchdowns, big divisional game in prime time, doing it when the lights are the brightest, right? That's also the eye test factor too, is you got a bunch of eyes on you when that happens. And Lamar, and honestly, John Harbaugh too, he's not up for the MVP award, obviously, but Lamar lives for prime time in a lot of these cases. He's not perfect on prime time, but for the most part, he goes out there on prime time and balls. Well, Jared Goff, he threw 5 interceptions. 5 interceptions. Lions still won, which is more of an indictment on the Texans than anything. That's just, how do you throw 5 interceptions and win the game? Or I guess the appropriate question is probably, how do you intercept 5 passes and lose? Honestly, it reminds me of that game back in 2021, the Browns-Ravens game where Lamar, you remember that? It was such a sloppy game. Lamar threw 4 interceptions and the Ravens still won 16-10. It was like the Browns were giving the Ravens the ball back, and the Ravens say, oh, no, you take it back. And then the Browns say, oh, no, you have it. Lamar say, oh, no, please, take it. Take the ball. And the Ravens still won the game. That's kind of what this Lions-Texans game felt like. Just side note, such a weird game. The weirdest game of the season by far. Weirdest game maybe in the last couple of years between Houston and Detroit. But that's beyond the point. Back onto Lamar MVP stuff. When comparing Lamar and Jared Goff, obviously people are going to look at the record, right? The Lions going into this game were 7-1. Obviously now they're 8-1, and the Ravens were 6-3. Now they're 7-3. But what I had said, especially on the shows that we did both Friday after the Bengals game and the bonus episodes over the weekend, which, by the way, if you missed our bonus episodes, we did an episode, 2 of them. We did 2 episodes over the weekend. One of them was on Mark Schlereth actually changing up on Lamar Jackson, and the other one was on some shocking trade details about the deadline that have come out, so be sure to check those out. But I had said that the difference between, at the time, 7-1 versus 6-3 is not big enough to have Jared Goff deserve MVP over Lamar based off of the actual stats. When we look at these stats here, the only thing that Jared Goff leads Lamar Jackson in is completion percentage. That's it. Lamar has more passing yards. Lamar has more pass yards per attempt, pass yards per game. He has more passing touchdowns. Coming into the week, Jared Goff had 4 interceptions. Lamar had 2. Now Jared Goff has 9 interceptions. Lamar has 2. Quarterback rating, and obviously all the rushing stats are in Lamar's favor as well because of his dynamic ability, not only with his arm, but with his legs. And look, I'm not saying Jared Goff doesn't have a case for being in the conversation. He deserves to be in the conversation. But there is a massive gap between Lamar and everybody else for MVP. Now, if Joe Burrow in that Bengals team was also 7-3 like the Ravens, those two would be duking it out head-to-head because there is something to be said about record. Right? I'm not saying that the record conversation isn't real because it is. Because Joe Burrow is not in these MVP talks because the Bengals are 4-6. But he is the second best quarterback in the league right now. Right? He is. This year, Joe Burrow is the second best quarterback in the league, and I think Lamar's number 1. Right? Now, 4-6 compared to 7-3, that is a gap big enough. Right? And I'll tell the story all the time, and for those who already know, I'm a Denver Nuggets fan. And when Nikola Jokic won the MVP and the Nuggets were the 6th seed in the year, he's won it 3 times. He also is an MVP3. But when the Nuggets, I can't remember what year it was, but I think it was his second. I think it was his second MVP. Maybe it was his first. I can't remember. But one of the two. He ended up, the Nuggets were the 6th seed, and people were mad that he won because there were people on other teams that had better records. And while Jokic was the best player in the league that season, there were other players that were also in that conversation, not as good as Nikola was, but he ended up, Nikola got the award because he was that much better than everybody else on the 6th seed. Now, Lamar has been the best quarterback, and he's on the better record team compared to Cincinnati, but even when you talk about the Lions having the better record than the Ravens, Lamar has still been better than Jared Goff. Even if you want to throw the 5 interception game out, I was still giving it to Lamar. And so this was definitely a reality check. And, RG3 took to social media and said, Jared Goff, on Sunday night single-handedly threw his MVP chances away. And look, yes, people are going to look back on this game because what did we talk about earlier? The prime time, right? The prime time. All eyes were on that game. Sunday night football, bright lights. And while the Lions won the game, Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions. I don't want to hear one more Jared Goff over Lamar take for MVP. I don't want to hear it. And because I said that, we're probably still going to get it. Some absurd thing. But I don't want to hear anybody over Lamar, right? I don't want to hear Josh Allen. I don't want to hear Joe Burrow. I don't want to hear anybody. Mahomes, right? I don't want to hear anybody. Lamar Jackson is the MVP. And unless something absolutely crazy happens, it's his award, and he's going to win this season. Coming up in the final part of the show, we are going to be diving into more of an AFC whip around here. So be sure to stay tuned. We're going to get to that and a lot more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 rewards card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks, mouth-watering desserts, and more, save 50% off statewide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So to get 100 in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. We're starting with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste the hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sports partner of the NFL. And this show is brought to you by DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround, or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? Well, you get the latter with DK Law Group. DK Law Group is a Maryland-based law firm who is redefining the legal process with their modern approach. DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech-savvy. They treat clients like family, and they focus on keeping your rules loose and simple. DK Law Group is a woman-led firm with Diana kind of the helm. Diana has been called an unparalleled legal expert by some. One of the things you'll quickly notice with DK Law Group is their transparent pricing. They believe in clarity and cost and no one left in limbo. DK Law Group knows that speed is key. By leveraging technology, DK Law Group streamlines the process to serve you better and faster. Contact DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. Locked On listeners and call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline, Empowering Legacies. We return our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Monday edition of the show. Thank you to everybody for tuning in today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every day. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form and subscribe over there as well. 5 days a week of Ravens coverage. However you decide to watch or listen to the show, same show, both audio and video. Just hit 9,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you want to be a part of that journey to 10K, be sure to hit that subscribe button in audio form. That community is growing each and every single week. So to all the everydayers out there, appreciate you for tuning in every single day. If you're new to the channel, welcome in. Hopefully you stay a while. And if you're somewhere in the middle, welcome back in. Let's do a little AFC whip around here. Because, again, we're 10 weeks into the season, at least for the most part. Miami and Los Angeles play tonight, although I don't know about you. I'm not really worried about the Dolphins at this stage. The fact that they are 2-6, that does not necessarily move me in terms of them being threats to the Ravens. But here's what we got in terms of the actual standings in the AFC through 10 weeks. Kansas City, somehow 9-0. I don't think they feel good about one of their wins this season. It's been the Taylor Swift magic. It's been the deal with Taylor Swift, I guess, in the NFL and whatever it is. But obviously they win on a last-second blocked field goal on Sunday, which just, again, unbelievable stuff. But, hey, you know what? Good teams find a way to win games, even though I don't think Kansas City is as good as they have been in the past. It is what it is. So Kansas City, I don't think they're a great football team this season, and I think that there's a good shot they get exposed come playoff time. But, hey, they're the defending champs. They're back-to-back, right? We have to respect them. and say, hey, you know what? Maybe they can turn it on again in the playoffs, because that is what we saw last year. But Kansas City 9-0. Then you have Buffalo, number 2. They're the AFC East leaders at 8-2. Pittsburgh is 7-2 after their big win over the Commanders. And then you have the Texans at number 4. They are 6-4. Now, there are 2 teams with a better record than the Texans. That is the Ravens. They're at 7-3, number 5 seed. And the Chargers, they're number 6 at 6-3. Now, that final wild card spot is interesting because Denver dropped to 5-5 after that loss. Then you have Indianapolis and Cincinnati. So essentially, I think either one of Pittsburgh, Baltimore, right? One of those teams is going to win the North. The other makes the 5 seed most likely. That's the scenario. So Baltimore can win the North and Pittsburgh gets the 5 seed, or the Steelers can win the North and Baltimore gets the 5 seed. Honestly, we're being honest. If the Texans are pretty much, obviously it's not guaranteed, but they're pretty much locked into the 4 seed. If Baltimore gets the 5 seed and they have to go to Houston to play, I'm taking Baltimore in that game by like 20 points. Like the way that Houston's playing this season, they've looked really bad this year compared to what they were last year, particularly CJ Stroud. And it's been rough. So again, we don't know anything until the playoffs happen, but I think either way, Baltimore would be in a decent shot in that wild card weekend game, whatever, if it's the AFC North champion or is the first wild card team. Then I think what you have is really interesting because you have Indy and Cincinnati. I mentioned Denver's situation there, dropping to 5-5. Indy and Cincinnati both 4-6. If the Bengals can beat the Broncos and the Chargers, that's going to be really interesting. Because I don't know kind of what the situation looks like, but if the Bengals can beat both those teams, 2 teams that they're fighting for playoff seeding with, could be really interesting. Not that I think that the Chargers get knocked out of the playoffs here, but that head-to-head over Denver could be really, really big for Cincinnati. Now, if Cincinnati loses either of those games, they're probably done. Like, their season already, I'm not so sure Cincinnati makes it, but there's a real shot because I don't really believe in the Colts. I mean, I think it comes down to kind of Denver and Cincinnati for that final wild card spot. But compared to how some of these other teams look, I mean, again, the Chiefs, they're finding ways to win, but they don't look as potent as they have in years past. Buffalo, they made additions like Amari Cooper, but we saw how those 2 teams matched up. Pittsburgh, we're going to see, and they just lost Alex Highsmith, who was a really important part, especially in the run game, as well as a pass rusher on that defense. We don't know the severity of it, but that was a really, really, really nasty-looking ankle injury. For Houston, I mentioned, they've been going through a lot of growing pains this season, particularly with CJ Stroud. And obviously, other than that, it's like, okay, well, the Chargers, they've looked pretty good this year, right? Jim Harbaugh has that team playing well, but we're going to see how those 2 teams match up in just a couple of weeks. So I think that Baltimore, in an AFC that was supposed to be super competitive, it's really not looking as daunting as a lot of people expected it to be. And part of that obviously is with Baltimore, their defense has not looked daunting, right? Their pass defenses look terrible. So when you talk about, the Ravens and the big bad AFC and, these teams, I mean, yeah, the Ravens are one of the top contenders in the AFC, and it's partially because of the historic offense they have, and a lot of it has to do with that. But the other part of it is the AFC is just not very strong in general right now compared to what people expected it to be. I mean, look, people expected the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. Oh, they're going to be great, and Aaron Rodgers is going to solve all their issues. The Jets were better last year. Dolphins, Tua got injured. They play tonight, but everybody was thinking, oh, that team's going to be great. They're not. Tennessee. Everybody was thinking Tennessee was going to be good. They're not. Jacksonville, could they resurge under Trevor Lawrence and a bunch of additions? They're not good. Cincinnati, they don't have a defense. Indy, they don't know what quarterback to start. Like, it's just all those different storylines. So the NFC looks more daunting than the AFC right now, and that to me is probably one of the bigger surprises. But again, it's just teams not living up to expectations that favors the Ravens. But obviously for Baltimore, they have their own set of weaknesses, but luckily they have one of the most historic offenses in NFL history on their side. That's all I have for you here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Appreciate everybody for tuning in to the show today. On the way out, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form. Subscribe over there 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Be sure to spread the word. Again, we can spread the word on social media all we want to, but word of mouth still very effective as a form of getting new people into the show. So if you have a friend or a family member who's a Ravens fan, they want daily Ravens coverage, be sure to send them over our way here. Coming up tomorrow, more Ravens content, talking about the biggest storylines and starting to look ahead to that Pittsburgh game in Week 11. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back in tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.